Do not be terrified. Do not be discouraged. For the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. 30 years ago, that was our class verse when we graduated. Class graduated from seminary. As we were picking that class verse, some in our class didn't think we should choose that verse. Do not be terrified. Do not be discouraged. Because they thought that would make us sound like whips. I think if we were to look through the Bible, we would find precious little reason to think that God thought of Joshua as a whip as he gave him this promise. Do not be terrified, do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. For 40 years, Joshua had been at the lead, serving at Moses' side as God's people were going through the Sinai wilderness. You might remember this. We talked about this a month ago in June. 40 years before our lesson, just a few weeks, 5-6 weeks after God delivered his people out of Egypt through that Red Sea, the Amalekites in the Sinai wilderness were attacking God's people. Joshua was set up to be commander of God's army to take the fight to the Amalekites. And with the blessing of God, he won. Just over a year later, at the border to the Promised Land, Joshua was one of the 12 scouts, spies, who were sent ahead to check out the land of Canaan. 10 of those 12 spies came back with a God-quitting report. The people are too strong. We can't do it. Joshua was one of the 2 scouts that came back with a God-trusting report. Yes, the people are strong, but we have God with us. Yes, the people are strong, but we have God and his promise. Sad to say, God's people weren't really all that interested in listening to or believing God's promise. God's promise wasn't good enough for them. And so, God gave them his judgment. Because they refused to believe his promise, for 40 years, the people of Israel would have to wander through the wilderness until everyone 20 years old and over at the time of the Exodus. Why then? Well, they had seen what God had done. They had seen what God can do for his people, so they should have known better than to reject and doubt his promise. 40 years they would have to wander through the wilderness until all those 20 years old and older at the time of the Exodus died in the desert. Except 2. Joshua and Caleb. They had believed God's promise, and so they would get to see God keep his promise. And so for 40 years, Joshua was there at Moses' side, God training Joshua to be his leader. Now it was time. Moses. The Moses who had stood up to Pharaoh, let my people go. The Moses who had delivered and led his people from Egypt through the Red Sea, and for 40 years had led them through the Sinai wilderness. That Moses who had talked to God on top of Mount Sinai, whose face glowed with the glory of God. That Moses that the people had been looking to and going to for help for 40 years. That Moses the people had been arguing against and fighting against for 40 years. Now that it was crunch time, now that it was time to go into the Promised Land, now that it was time to face those enemy armies, now that Moses was dead, and now it was God's time for Joshua. Joshua would be the one who would lead his people across the Jordan, who would lead his people into the Promised Land, who would lead his army up against the enemy armies. And so the people would be looking to Joshua to lead them in the fight. They'd be looking to Joshua for Joshua to make life right for them. How do you think that would feel? Following in Moses' footsteps. How do you think that would feel having all of God's people looking to you as the one who is going to lead them to life made right? And so when God set Joshua up as leader, God didn't just say to Joshua, good luck. And God didn't tell Joshua about how Joshua had fought the good fight, the army general. He didn't tell Joshua how he had passed some leadership test, or how he had gained the people's confidence, or if not that, at least had gained God's confidence. No, God didn't say those things to Joshua. Instead, what God told Joshua was, be strong and courageous. Do not be terrified. Do not be discouraged. For the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. And the enemy's out there. And I imagine, or at least a few of you have some out there, right? The enemies out there are hard against you. When troublemakers inside your own camp are stirring up trouble for you, when your people won't follow, when your days are hard and long, when what seems to be coming up for you, it seems impossible and overwhelming, when God's ways don't seem to make sense, when God's ways don't seem to work, be strong and courageous. Do not be terrified. Do not be discouraged. For the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. Why? Why? Not because you're so smart or so strong. Not because you're such a good leader or such a good parent. Not because you're so good at what you do. But here's why. Because you have his promise. The Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. Do you ever feel like your world is turned against you? Or that what you have coming up ahead seems impossible and overwhelming? Be strong and courageous. Why? For the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. He delivered. Think about it. He delivered his people out from under the thumb of Pharaoh. And when God's people were stuck between the Red Sea and the Egyptian army, when they were stuck right in the middle, impossible for them to get out, God got them out. Delivered them right through that Red Sea. That same God who delivered his people, that same God who did the impossible, that same God, the Lord your God, will be with you wherever you go. Do you ever feel let down by other people? Let down, frustrated, betrayed? You work really hard. You work really hard to make things right. And maybe it's for your family, maybe it's for God's family, maybe out in the world. You work really hard to make things right. But somebody doesn't listen. Somebody doesn't follow through. And what happens? It turns into a real ugly mishmash. Or someone promises you. Someone promises you, and you believe them. And then your hope and your heart get crushed. Be strong and courageous. Do not be terrified. Do not be discouraged. Why? For the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. No matter how many times the people failed Joshua, no matter how many times they failed Moses before Joshua, God kept his promises to Joshua and Moses. No matter how many times people might fail you, God won't. No matter how many times people might break their promises to you, God won't. No matter how many times people might let you down, betray you, and turn things into an ugly mishmash, what do you get to know? You get to know that all things, even that ugly mishmash, will be turned to work together for your good. Why do you get to know that? The Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. You ever feel like a failure? Failure as a leader? Failure as a parent? Failure as a child of God? You want to be strong with Jesus. You want to say the right thing. You want to do the right thing. But then under pressure, find yourself crumbling. You want to be strong with Jesus. You want to say the right thing, and you want to say it the right way, but then maybe what you find is that you get yourself so worked up in trying to say this right thing the right way that instead of it coming out the right way, it comes out as the words with the face of, well, the bully boss Grouch. And the people you're talking to see and hear precious little Jesus in what you said. But we want to get it right for God. We want to get it right for those people in our lives. So often we mess it up, don't we? I know that time and again I mess it up. I mess it up here. I mess it up at home. I mess it up out in the world. And then it can be so easy to make excuses, to put the blame off on somebody else. It can be so easy to beat ourselves up and to beat ourselves down. So easy to throw up our hands and just... Driving home earlier this week, the good Spirit of God reminded me that our lesson doesn't just say, do not be terrified, but our lesson also says, do not be discouraged. And not just discouraged by those things that aren't going our way out and around us, but it can also be, do not be discouraged by those ugly things, those failures that go on inside us. Why? God didn't just give us a Joshua to command and lead us. He didn't just give us a pep talk, be strong and courageous. But our God gave us a Jesus, a Savior. Our Jesus didn't crumble under the pressure. And our Jesus, when he was strong and courageous, he didn't bowl over people because he was strong. Instead, our Jesus, he led and he served with the heart of God. Yes, with the strength of God, but he loved and he led and he served with the love of God. And what's great is, not only did he get it right, but he didn't just say, okay, see what I did? Now you go do it. He doesn't say that, doesn't he? Oh, that's not all he said, that's not all he did. But that same Jesus, what he did is, he took as his own all my leadership failures, all my husband failures, all my family failures, all my failures out there in the world, and he did that for all of us. He took all of our leadership and our parenting and he took all of our guilt as his own. And he took it to the cross and he buried it there, done, paid for, and gone. So that now you have God saying to you, you're forgiven. Forgiven. Forgiven and set right with God. Forgiven to lead with God. Forgiven to serve with God. And with God, we don't need to be kicking ourselves and beating ourselves up or beating ourselves down. With God, we don't need to live stuck in fear. What's going to happen? With God, we don't need to get down on ourselves and down on the people around us because things aren't going the way that we want. So with God, we get to step up like Joshua did. We get to step up and lead with the heart of Jesus. We get to step up and serve with the heart of Jesus. And know that we will be part of God's blessing. Why? Listen to what he says. Do not be terrified, and do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever